Hello, this is Nikki coming at you here from another location. I'm continuously in different places. I have a job that really keeps me moving from place to place, and it definitely makes life interesting. Um, yeah, I just wanted to connect and introduce the fourth video here on the Freedom Through Basics course. We're halfway there, which is really exciting. And this video is really just about breath and daily life. So, talking about how we can essentially be so tuned in, so dialed in to our daily life and be able to utilize breathwork practices to really just support ourselves beyond our sessions, because really when it comes down to it, it isn't just about the breath work that we do. It's not about going into a session or having a daily practice. All of that stuff is important. However, it isn't the most important thing. And the reason why is that sometimes we get caught up in, trying to essentially have a rhythm and a flow to things that, that essentially helps us on a daily, in a daily level. However, what comes up with this is that we can get fixated or just sort of stuck in patterns of like, oh, we have to do this thing every day. We have to be consistent, and if we can get away from feeling like we're obligated to these routines or to these schedules, then it's important to, to see that, to feel that, and to be like, is this really something that is serving me? Because just because we have a rhythm or a flow of some kind and we're wanting to do something consistently doesn't necessarily mean that we are really embodying the practices that we are working with. So that is something to really be mindful of. Just that, essentially we can get caught into that, and we can kind of take ourselves away from the practice of breath beyond, beyond just what we're doing on a regular basis. So, and this translates over to our experience in life and how the breath itself can actually help us to come back to balance. And, really when it comes down to it, and what I've been really working with in the last few weeks is that, yes, consistency is important in terms of showing up and having some kind of indicator of, okay, I'm making some progress, I'm moving from one, timeline to another. Having a consistent practice can be important if we are looking to, build upon skills or to learn something new. Those things are all so important. But like I said, if we get too fixated on the practice, on the routine, then sometimes we lose depth and we lose the ability to go within ourselves a little bit more with our practice. Especially if we're like, oh, I did the 30 minutes or I did the 20 minutes. It's like, well, what if you wanted to do more? Like, what if there's some more expansion that can happen within that? So these are just some ways that, and for myself, I usually speak from experience or from the experience of those that I know. Um, and really, like, most of the people that I've worked with, and myself included, it is really about, how we take our breath beyond our session, and how essentially if we want to do a larger practice, if we want to, really explore something that we haven't explored before, that we have the room in our capability and we have the room in our schedules to do that, and give ourselves the permission to explore things that might be outside of our, of our routine, of our schedule, of, our consistent daily practice, but can really give us the depth and the, yeah, just the presence with our practice. So yeah. And, a big one too that I wanted to talk about today is that we have certain things in our daily life. We have certain aspects of our day to day life that are really important to recognize. And these pieces are really just like, how are we really showing up in our breath? Like, how are we showing up when we're in a hard situation, when we're going through challenge, when we're going through stress? Like, how does our breath respond to those situations? Also, how is our posture? So, if we are continuously arching, if we are, maybe we're arched back, maybe we're just in a space where we're kind of closing off the ability for our diaphragm to fully expand. For parts of our, we have our shoulder diaphragm, we have a thoracic diaphragm. There is, diaphragmatic activity in our pelvis. So, these places where we can breathe from, are we giving ourselves the postural ability to do that? Like, are we continuously sitting all day? Are we, for example, if we're bending and reaching a lot, like, is our pelvis in a state of dysregulation? So these are all factors in how we breathe. And as well too, if we're over breathing, if we're mouth breathing, if we're breathing more from the middle of our body rather than out the sides or the back body, these can all also be indicators that our breath might be just out of alignment. And perhaps it might just be a matter of a few simple things to shift that. Some pieces that I always use with, really just coming back into balance with our breath is to just sort of see where I am over breathing or mouth breathing. Like, am I currently trying to exert and be in a state of force? And maybe there's something I can change within that. And, really just to recognize those moments when things might feel like, for example, if we're mouth breathing, it's like maybe I'm feeling a sense of stress or overwhelm, or, I might be breathing like this because I'm having a hard time with this strenuous activity. So just one second. Okay, so what I was saying essentially is just that, if we can support our posture, if we can really recognize where exactly we might be over breathing, under breathing, mouth breathing, things like that, we can really get a good insight into where essentially we might want to work on things. And as well too, if we're working on consistent breath practices, we can start to explore those areas. And for example, if you're taking any breath, just at this moment, if you're breathing, you can always just take a natural breath. And what you would be doing is putting your hands on your ribs. And then from there, as you're breathing, you can notice where you might not be getting any engagement in your rib cage, or maybe you're getting more breath coming forward through the front of your chest into what would be your belly, but not necessarily breathing through your belly. And really just shifting the awareness and giving yourself the ability to, breathe in other locations. So, this is a great tool to really just repattern how you might be showing up with your breath. And really, there's sort of like a default level of which we show up. So sometimes, and this isn't the case for everyone, but sometimes we have it where, we're just kind of like automatically doing life. We're kind of on autopilot, and our breath might be shallow. It might be, our mouth might be open. We might not be breathing through our nose as much. So that's really common. It's a really common thing that comes up when we're breathing and when we're doing certain things in our life. So it's just good to be aware of those pieces. So I would definitely recommend taking a few breaths during or after this video and really just putting your hands on your rib cage, coming all the way down from your rib cage towards your hips and just breathing a few breaths and feeling where things are happening. Where is the breath going? And where could it essentially go? Where could there be improvements in the breath as far as depth and whether or not you're breathing through a clear nose, if you're breathing, and it's a little bit labored, if you're having a hard time taking a breath in or exhaling, and just taking note of all of these pieces. And as well too, going into our other piece of this, which is our daily life, how can you essentially start to take this awareness of the breath and translate it into pieces of your daily life? So, it's like we're taking this note, this recall, where we're essentially making a little bit of a list of things that could be improved upon and to work with those things, right? So in our own life, it's like, are there places where we can essentially look at that and say, maybe for me, working at this capacity doesn't work so well. So maybe there's a way for me to do the same kind of work at the same capacity but in a different state of my nervous system, a different regulation within my system. So, really looking at that and seeing, are there improvements that can be made as you're, for example, if you're talking to someone, if you're in a meeting, if you're essentially like you're lifting and carrying certain things, like, is there a better breath rhythm that I can get into to support what it is that I'm doing? And, this really helps us. It helps us to stay present. It helps us to recognize that everything we experience is just a greater learning experience and that, we can really slow things down and start to give ourselves more of an awareness to lead us into feeling more comfortable, more safe, more secure with the things that we're working on and that we're doing and also to go outside of our comfortability and to look at things and evaluate things that maybe we've been avoiding or that we felt challenged by and sort of coming at it with a curiosity of could this get better, could this be different, and yeah, just to be open minded about that process, that things could be improved, things could be different, and not to necessarily get caught up in, oh, well, why can't we get it to begin with? Like, why is this such a hard thing for us? Why are we so challenged by it right now? And so these are pieces that are really important to be deepened into that, like, not to take it too personally and just to recognize that on this journey of life that we're on, we get to be curious about our experience and we get to show up and to be really present with our breath and our bodies and how we move through life. So, if anything, take this as an invitation to explore these pieces and to recognize that our breath really is life. Like how we breathe is how we live, and how we live will really impact the things in our lives that matter most to us, whether it be family, whether it be our activities, going out in nature, like all of these things are so important, right? So if we can learn to be more connected to our breath and take that into the daily life practices that we do, then I could guarantee that it's going to be a more enjoyable experience. And that when we lead with curiosity, especially with our breath, we can start to really go deeper and to welcome the things that may be challenging and sticky and be open to see those sides of ourselves. So, anyway, I'm just going to close this video out for now. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the school community chats. You can send me a direct message over there as well. It's always a pleasure being here with you guys and sharing a little bit about the breath. And if you can learn anything from this video today, just remember that we are focusing on our awareness outside our breath practice. So, how does our breath affect our life? Okay, have a great day, you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next one.